So again, all of this is subject to change. This is something that me and Indogene have come up with, and I will make sure to tag him down in the description. This is something that we call the King's Spire. So, similar to Kenobi's idea, this is going to be a tower that will take place of the Arena Tavern. Now, don't click off the video. I see you clicking off. Don't you fricking do it. Don't do it. Let me explain.
I was about to.
Let me explain.
I was about to.
Let me explain.
No, you touch my
Calm
baby.
down.
No, you touch my baby.
The reason for this is the Arena Tavern is no longer in use. Right? So that space is being controlled. Where we could have say, a king takes that tower over and cuts an absolute swath across the seas of those that try to oppose them. But in the end, the king is victorious. Who this king is, we don't know. This, for conversation, we're going to say this is King Indogene, the first of his name, that has taken this tower over, and now I have clicked out of Discord. My bad. There we go. But for conversation...
Wait, are we saying, like, that the king of this tower is a player or an actual lore character to set this up for, like, story stuff?
This will be a lore character. And this could be a new character, or this could be an existing character that has decided that he has a pair on him, or her, and has taken the Arena Tavern as their own. And we call this the King's Spire. This is a new innovative PvP idea that also benefits PvE players, but it also hinders them, which is why this is a bit of a kind of a twist here. So traditionally, your typical PvP player, one of the biggest problems that Indogene has with this game, and myself included, is runners. Now, they are very much allowed to do this because that is how the game is made, and I agree that runners should have, but at the same time, this will hinder the runners because it's going to be a King of the Hill style sort of thing. Kind of contrary to what Kenobi was talking about. So, when this spire is captured, it is similar to a sea fort where you have enemies that defend it. This could be skeletons, it could be phantoms, it could be something new. But they are defending this tower and their great king that they so dutifully protect. So, you progress it similar to a sea fort, to where you get up to the captain wave, but it's actually the king, and you enter the throne room, which is just overfilled with this king's treasure of his lust for gold. Right? And once you have that boss fight over, you can now capture the spire. And once that spire is captured, it starts to take loot from the entire server as it is turned in, which starts at a 3% income, up to 15% at a grade 5. So it would progress similar to a tier flag. So it's going to have a decently long cap time, right? So I say for my notes, I put a 7.5 minute cap time, but I'm probably going to reduce that to a 5 here, just as an audible. And it can be progressed a bit faster by other players. So if you have a sloop, brigantine, galleon, if you have more people on there, it captures faster. Aside from solo players that have the maximum cap rate automatically, since they're solo. Players that control the spire can roam freely, but they risk losing the spire to an opposing crew, which can take the spire over. So, as gold is raked in from the server, the controlling crew begins to stack cash-out values similar to Hourglass or the Burning Blade. Opposing crews that attempt to capture it are met by roaming, skeleton, ghost ships, or whatever ends up being implemented there before capturing the spire, and they have to do the same boss fight. And if a crew that is currently controlling the spire sinks, the spire is just lost. It cannot be instantly taken over by invading players. And players that capture the spire are removed from an alliance if they are in one, and cannot join one similar to the Burning Blade, simply because, like, at that point, that's majorly OP in my opinion. Since you're taking loot from everybody in the server already up to a maximum value, I don't find that to be okay. Like I said, it would work similar to an emissary flag. Start at grade 1, you get 3% income from everybody on the server. Goes 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 at grade 5. And instead of actually not instead of when you turn loot in as a player that is in that server, you get your bonus emissary value, but you also get a negative modifier that has the crown of the king in that bubble there. And it also counts for everybody else's emissary flag. So if somebody has a grade 5 Reaper, for example, if they sell that, let's just use a Reaper's chest example because it's a flat 10k. So if they have a grade 5 turn in as for a Reaper's bounty, that is 25k at grade 5. I gotta resit here, lag out. They would then lose 15% of that 25k, which would be roughly almost 5k if my math is correct there. No, a little bit less than 5k, so 4. So it's nothing overpowering, but it's a constant, if somebody's just PvEing all around, they're losing money. That's really annoying. Let me go fight that crew. Right? And if you don't care about the gold, then it doesn't really affect you. So it doesn't kill the PvE section there, but it does hinder them a bit, because you're losing gold.
That creates incentive for them to go and have to get rid of that crew.
Yes.
So I already have some issues in terms of this, but I start going over.
No, go ahead. That's all my bullet points.
My thought about, we already have the ability to just transfer from server to server with the single put down of a voyage. So what's to stop players from just saying, well, if my money's gonna be less effective on this server, why don't I just go to a new one?
That was my exact same thought.
That is fair.
People who are just PvEing are not going to singular shit about this. They will just go to another server, and content will not be interacted with by anybody except for people who are sweaty, just looking for a fight, who don't care about gold anyway. It's one of those cool ideas on paper that will not work out exactly as stated, as intended with the game the way it is, I feel like.
What if while the tower was controlled, you couldn't use dive voyages? You could only use regular voyages.
At that point, okay, I'm gonna put my mind into that of a PvEer who just does not care about PvP.
Mm-hmm.
I leave the server, I hop to a new one on a fresh boat, and I can playing.
That is still fair.
It costs me supplies, but I'm a runner. I'm a PvEer. I only care about digging up my gold hoarder chests and progressing commendations. I give no shits about fighting people. I don't like the toxic people that hurl bad gamer words. I don't like being sunk and losing my time. I'd rather just sink myself and go to a new server. Your content's not interacted with. Have a good day. I feel like that's how that works out in practice. That's my personal first thought about that. I will say, so how exactly mechanically does the whole... Okay, well, you said that it costs, you get less money from selling stuff while the tower is active, correct?
Correct. It would be at whatever rate
at
that
first it
that
sounded
tower
like
is
your
at.
loot gets taken off of your ship as an
Oh,
income
no.
tax by the game.
It's literally a whole server-wide version of the royal tax that me and Indogene do, except when you turn it in, you lose that value when you turn in. So, for example, but if the tower is not active, it doesn't affect the server. So somebody has to capture that tower for that to be active.
Okay, so the first thing I think of, and I'm just going to be blunt straight from the get-go.
Go ahead.
From the lore perspective, in-world perspective, I'm going to be like rules loring stuff, and I'm going to be thinking about like I'm going to be incredibly like ADHD thinking about like every little lore point I can and being as absolutely consistent and making as much sense as possible. First of all, how exactly does the tower from an in-world perspective cause your loot to lose value? Like, is the king of the tower forcing the outposts to pay out less gold? If so, why the hell are the outposts obeying the king? In order for this to make sense, I think you would have to have a pretty major story shift where this character, whether it's Flameheart or some other, whoever has taken over the tower, the Sea Dogs Tavern, would have to conquer the Sea of Thieves as a whole and basically oppress the entirety of the seas in order to force them. Because keep in mind, the outposts, the people who run the shops are pirates too. They're not likely to listen to a crown. That's kind of antithetical to being a pirate to begin with. So you have to have some major story progression before this idea, as it has been stated, in my mind at least, seems feasible to make sense at least.
I think that's definitely fair. I guess I forgot to put the bullet point of cosmetic unlocks for this. Commendations would be a full gold-plated like ship, like everything, literally everything is gold to match the gold lust of the king, whoever this mystery king may be. So like an actual like solid gold, like Austin Powers gold member level gold ship set.
I see. So
cannons.
the king that we're introducing is basically King Midas.
Thank you. Yep, I was thinking the same thing. King Midas.
King Midas.
I also don't necessarily like the idea. Sorry to interrupt just before we move to the cosmetics and whatnot. I feel like having a server-wide event like this, while it's a cool idea on paper, it's another one of those things, like for this game specifically and how it works. Maybe I'm thinking a little too much in terms of keeping the status quo of how the game generally functions in terms of general playstyle. But I know, like, whether PvP or not, I personally am not going to like the notion that at some time this event could activate and then suddenly all treasure is just worth less, right? Like, at that point, that's just going to be annoying. Maybe, like, even if I like PvP, maybe I just don't want to engage with the Spire because I just can't be arsed to give a shit that day, right? Like, I don't like the idea that your treasure is being messed with for something that you haven't opted into. Like, if you opted into it, maybe that would be one thing. But I'll let you go over the cosmetics before I provide some alternate ideas as to how this idea would work and maybe still be generally feasible as the same general concept. So, continue.
Cosmetic wise, I would say everything would be solid gold after the theme of this king that has this just absolute illustrious lust for gold.
Yeah,
weapon
maybe
set
have everything
included.
with a shiny.
Yeah, like a
shine
really
to it.
like a real glossy hint to it.
Yeah, like reflects light and
Yeah, like you see, it's
Like
like you
this-
know, oh my gosh, that ship is gold. Like, you know, like I said,
like this
Austin
is some
Powers
fancy
gold member,
high
like
grade shit.
level-
Maybe it's
level
jewel
gold.
encrusted.
yeah, like I'm talking like the whole everything would be just solid 24 karat plated wood gold with like diamonds here and there.
There is magic in the air.
Like the cannons themselves would be solid gold, and maybe it has like an effect on it where it's like a liquid gold that drips from the cannons whenever it fires.
I'd be okay with that.
I
Like,
think
you
that
see little
sounds really sick.
splatters
Like
of
you see it just
to
kind of
liquid
splattering
gold,
all over
like
the
fire out of the
hull.
cannon.
Yeah. Or
I would like that visually. That's very distinct.
the sails covered like the finest like purple cloth, because like royalty wise you have to think like gold goes with purple, like a very like velvet purple, very royal purple set of sails that has the
You
mark
could also
of the
potentially
king.
have like maybe a velvety red, also potentially.
Or I guess theoretically red would work too. As far as like, the only reason I'm using the Sea Dogs Tavern, at least from a gameplay perspective, it is in the middle of the map. It is like the perfect middle section, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
why.
already in the perfect location. It's already the right general structure.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the only
smart
reason
way
I
to
chose.
recycle that.
Yeah, and to me, like, if we could go into the Sea Dogs Tavern, I wouldn't have even used that as a an idea in the first place. But the thing is, like, it's literally just a tower that has a ship right there, and there's no function to it. Like, if they would have implemented that into Hourglass, this idea would not have kind of sprung.
So, okay, so this, I'm not sure how you're going with this. Oh, well, first I'll finish off with...
Go ahead. Like, I'm pretty much done here. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure how you'll feel about this, because this is different thematically. Okay, so if it's using the Sea Dogs Tavern, now, in lore, DeMarco's spirit was found, one of the leaders of the arena, right?
Right.
It was never shown in game, and I haven't read the comic myself, so I don't really know exactly what the story fully is, so this could be subject to change, or maybe not even applicable. But, his sister Lissetti did find his ghost. I do know that much. So instead of having a villainous king take over the tavern, what if DeMarco's spirit returns and tries to breathe new life into the arena? In a sense, not like as the game mode as it once was, but this would shift the focus from a purely greedy gold aspect to more of a to everybody who wants to join for the glory of battle in and of itself type. And it would create your King of the Hill type game mode without, it would only be opt-in for people who show up to the event, so it's not affecting other people on the server. And it would be like a contest between all ships who show up to see who's holding the tower, who's holding the tavern as their tower, their hill, by the end of a time limit. Like, I don't know, hypothetically say 30 minutes or something like that. Like, crews duke it out for like a 30-minute match or something, and at the end, like, DeMarco awards gold and rewards based on like how well your performance was. Maybe you could put a scoring system in, like for sinking ships or something. I don't that just kind of a half-assed idea to kind of like arena awards. And like the amount of points you'd earn during the event would translate into how much gold or something like that. And like it's treated as a contest where DeMarco rewards you for conquering the tower and actually holding it.
I have two immediate...
Like, how would you feel along those lines?
It's an interesting twist. I think my two biggest issues with that is, number one, if you're going to bring DeMarco back, you're going to piss off all the people that actually want Arena back, which is going to just negatively receive that in general. Because at that point, like, it's not Arena, and you're bringing back all the Arena, like, aspect of that, and they would probably tie the old Arena cosmetics to that as well, to save them time. So I think that would very much frustrate those players. And on the flip side, too, I think if it were an opt-in, the only issue with that is it would, after like certain comms are done, nobody's going to touch it, similar to Siren Song. So there has to be some sort of incentive by the whole server, like, hey, we should probably go take care of this, or something similar to that nature, to where it incentivizes everyone on the server to want to either eliminate the person that holds the Spire, or to simply just let nobody have the Spire in general.
Or it could be a third PvP faction.
That is also possible. These characters could be like completely new, or existing. That's the part I wanted to pick Dragon's brain on, was who would you put as the crown, other than like, you know, obviously DeMarco here.
Okay, so if we don't go with DeMarco and See, here's the part I'm really struggling with. I get what you're going for, like, decentivize the run. But I really just don't think that could feasibly work out with, like, the way the game works during during the time the event is active. Because as I said, I really just feel like that only people who, for the people by itself, are going to join in on that. I'm sure you'd get newer players who are interested in the PvP. You'd probably get types like Fallout, the guy we met last night, who aren't necessarily hardcore PvPers on an average basis, but like they're interested and they're willing to get into it. But let's be honest here, by and large, the majority of the Sea of Thieves player base are the quote-unquote herbivores of the food chain. They're the types that'll go around just doing their own thing, and we reap them for loot typically, and they don't like it because they're literally just here to sail around and relax. I feel like your idea to advise people to go after it because it creates a problem for the server is in essence exactly what will cause it to become dead content, because everybody will just leave the server to get away from it because it will be that hassle.
That is also fair.
At least, knowing the Sea of Thieves player base.
Like, I definitely see, like, that's not something we really thought of, is, you know, oh, the Spire's controlled, I'm just going to leave the server, and I'm not going to care to bother. But I think that's why we kept the percentage so low of, like, the loot lost is, oh, man, it's, you know, 15% or, 3 to 15%. Like, that's a bummer, but it's not hindering the player.
Yeah, there may very well be people that just don't care and keep playing. I can definitely see potentially, like, new players who have no idea what they're not even going on. Is so often the case with this game. So that's also a possibility.
I think, like, it would have to have a message similar to how emissary flags are raised. It's like, oh, the Spire has been taken. Eliminate the players who would also be marked on the map permanently. Like
we know the new players would not read that. They never read that shit.
Yeah, I know. But
so
like, just
sad, but
for like, that would be an accessibility thing. Like, okay, here it's there.
Yeah.
For those to read if they want to read it, or they can ignore it.
I
But
agree.
that player ship would be marked on the map permanently with the crown of the king. If we're still using the king example, this is just me kind of spitballing.
Yeah, just use that as the basis.
Well, just so it's not, it's different from the guild marker, it's different from the Reapers. That way it's its own thing and has its own marker. And so, like, different from the blade as well, since that's now marked on the map.
The big problem from a design philosophy standpoint, again, is the fact that it does oppress the entire server in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not that bad. It's still affecting other people's play session if they stay on that server and just do not give a singular dog shit about that tower. So this kind of takes away from the greedy Golden King type theme, but you could go, I mean, I think the most sensible route, at least as Sea of Thieves currently stands from my knowledge of the lore and the story currently, it could also be a case of Flameheart. He declares himself King Flameheart. Maybe take it as like a throne, a perch to overlook the seas from.
So we thought of that too.
And maybe it's a case of maybe because Flameheart, from a story perspective, at least as a skeleton lord, cares kind of little about the gold for him. It's more so just about the bloodshed. His goal for the seas is to turn it into a war zone forever, where quote unquote pirates, more like just bloodthirsty warmongers, are fighting for mine and just constantly like dying, being brought back and fighting again, like a twisted pirate Valhalla of sorts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if he were the king, it would make more sense. Like, yeah, there'd probably be a payout because he's smart enough to understand that gold and good motive, yes, and he was a pirate in life. So there would still be like a gold reward. Maybe it's like the longer you hold this, the more your points rack up, and the more points you earn, the more gold you get at the end of it.
Yeah,
like
and that's where
the tower
I had
or something.
the idea of it has
But
like
the primary
an
themage
hourglass
could
sort of thing.
possibly be around the bloodshed, the battle, and the pure like just thrill of the fight, rather than about.
Where like the
From a
more
theme
ships you sink, you get a streak similar to hourglass, and you can cash that out at any time. sort of thing.
That could also be a case, like if you
Right.
want to hunt
And the
other
more
ships.
gold that you hoard on your boat with those, and flags would have certain extra rep bonuses for that.
You could have like an hourglass style defending bonus for how much of a stash.
Yeah.
That could also be applicable.
We went down the Flameheart rabbit hole when we thought of this. The only thing that kept me from going, oh, let's just make this Flameheart, is we literally just had a Flameheart season. So I wanted it to be something aside from Flameheart, if possible. That way, it's just not him stealing literally the entire show the entire time. Not that there's any issue with that, at least from my mind. I don't mind that. I just thought it would be cool having it be a separate
He's
character.
the primary antagonist of Sea of Thieves
Flameheart.
as a span.
So I think another thing that kept us from Flameheart is, at the end of Flameheart considers himself the big boss too, correct? So at that point, he'd be like, somebody is trying to take my mantle. Let's put a bounty on them, right? So if you're a Reaper, you have
Absolutely.
extra incentive.
That is also very true. That could be a potential double mechanic for it. Like if you happen to be playing or incentive for it.
And same thing with the Pirate Lord. Pirate Lord is also the head of the Athenas, and he doesn't like Flameheart. So those two may end up like enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing in gameplay wise.
Maybe
Because they both threaten
I know
both
at
factions.
the very least, as far as motivations goes, the Pirate Lord is definitely not a character. He's sort of just like the take a step back and let other people do their own thing. I'll intervene to provide guidance. As like a wise mentor sort of character. So if he gets involved, it's probably going to be from a standpoint of necessity. Like whoever this king at the tower is a new threat to the Sea of Thieves. We already have enough to deal with Flameheart on our hand.
Yeah.
This guy needs to go. So rally up my Athena forces. Let's move out and kick some ass type of deal.
Yeah, and that's I think more of what I was kind of meaning, aside from teaming up with Flameheart there. Because at that point, it's a threat to everyone, and I think that's the theme I want to go for. Is this Spire, whoever controls it, is a threat to everyone. That I kind of wanted the blade to be in my mind, where you could just kind of cycle the blade out, but it doesn't act as a world event for keeping other world events hindered. So you could have other world events going on at the same time as this person has the Spire.
Threat to the Sea of Thieves.
I have a slight
so what is this person's motivations beyond this?
to conquer.
Unless
So
we're literally
I
just
have a-
going to argue.
I have a slight oh hey, this would be funny. What if it was Cutler Beckett from Pirates of the Caribbean, and he's implementing his tariffs upon everybody to
If that were the
widen the
case-
East India Trading Company?
So that's actually a very lore valid idea, but instead of Cutler Beckett, it would be the Grand Maritime, which is the Sea of Thieves lore's version of the East India Trading Company, essentially. Basically, a bunch of rich, pompous British assholes that run the monarchy, or like an oligarchy, I should say, where they run a lot of the businesses in England, and they have a very major background of Sea of Thieves. It's a very well-known fact that the Emporiums, lore-wise, are run by the GMU.
So that's
and so are
interesting.
the
I didn't know there was
sovereigns.
lore behind the Emporium. That's funny.
Sink them.
Puff has an idea. Says a monster or boss that
So-
causes whirlpools. The fight would be fast-paced with the risk of your ship being sucked into the whirlpool. Maybe you throw bombs into the whirlpool to blow up the monster, opening an opportunity for cannon attacks.
Well,
of that
boys, my mechanic's coming handy. Drop one in and watch it float to the bottom.
Sloop inbound. I think that'd be definitely interesting. I've always wanted a whirlpool scenario as something where
I
you
thought of
have
that
to
too.
It could be like a it could be like a Charybdis type sea monster from Greek mythology.
that
I think
it
it's
would have
Charybdis
to be
that does the
something that
whirlpools.
you have to either eliminate or it locks you in with another boat or something like that, and you have to navigate your way out by being the better helm